Hello, I'm Emma B. Perez, life design and career coach for teens and young adults. This Empower Your Teen YouTube channel is all about supporting parents. To learn how your high school or college age child can go from undecided to excited, click the link in the description box. To get even more support as a parent, just stick around by subscribing and clicking the notification bell. Okay, let's get to today's topic. All right, welcome everyone, welcome back, and please join me in welcoming Wendy Gossett today. Thank you so much for being here.
I am excited to be here. Thanks.
Yes. All right, let's jump right in. I want to go ahead and get started by asking you if you wouldn't mind sharing your story with us. Can you tell us how you came to do your work?
I would love to, because you know what's ironic about life is that sometimes those uncomfortable situations that we want to get out of so desperately are what make us who we are and what define us. And in my case, that was a difficult child. So I had all these expectations because I waited a while to become a parent. I was single for a long time. It took me a long time to find Mr. Right. And I had all these high expectations for, what being a parent would be. And my first child was easy. I mean, he was the textbook baby. You go to chapter 1, which is, what they're supposed to do at 6 months. That's what he was doing. And, he just went by the textbook. And I thought, what are all these parents, complaining about? This is so easy, this parenting business. And so I was kind of, a late bloomer. And so I thought, well, he's so easy. Let's just get pregnant with number 2, like right away. And so he was still crawling and I was pregnant with number 2. Well, he has the temperament of Bob Ross, the painter, and my daughter has the temperament of the Black Widow, like from Marvel Comics. Like she's Katniss. Like if you're having a zombie apocalypse, you want my daughter on your team because that's who she is. And so, I'm more fluffy. I'm more of a feeler, and that's why I, work with families and parents all the time and help them talk about their feelings about their family situations. And I talk about my feelings. I'm very comfortable communicating and sharing that, very demonstrative. My daughter was like this, like she would go to school and be Miss Charming. And she'd come home and she'd have monosyllabic answers for me. How was your day? Fine. I'd pick her up from school to go see Frozen. Like I'd take her out of school to see Frozen, a mom-daughter date, and she wouldn't smile. She wouldn't even say thank you. And I worked with a parent that had the same temperament daughter as mine. And she had just made her daughter, she'd punished her by having her write 100 times, I will show appreciation. Because this temperament does not know how to show appreciation. They do not know how to show empathy or be demonstrative with their emotions. And they can be very black and white and kind of rigid. And so we were really butting heads by the time she was 6 years old. It all came to a head when I asked her to clean her room. And after 10 minutes, her room is a disaster. And after 10 minutes, she said, Mom, my room's clean. And I went up there. And of course, I was looking for things to praise her for because our relationship was kind of bumpy. And I said, it's beautiful, Jordan. Good job. I'm so surprised you did it so quickly. And I see this little banana peel sticking out from under her bed. And I realized she'd taken her entire room and put it under her bed. And so at that moment, I just kind of exploded because I didn't understand. That was her way of being efficient and practical. I thought she was being lazy. And so all I could see were her weaknesses. So all I could see, because I didn't recognize her strengths at that time. I didn't realize that she is calm and rational and analytical and a negotiator and all these wonderful things. I saw manipulative. I saw, apathetic, all these awful things. And so I'd been working in the corporate world doing all kinds of temperament trainings. And I thought, I'd also worked in the classroom, and I thought, why can't I apply this to my own daughter and learn her temperament so that I can focus on her strengths and tell her what I want to see more of rather than what I don't want to see. And so she literally has written her signature. I don't know if I have a business card handy, but she's written her name on my business. This is her, hold it up. This is her signature. And it's, can you see that?
Oh.
Yeah, that's her signature. It's on my website too. But her signature is literally on everything I do, because it's because of her, and it's because of this bumpy relationship that we had that I now help thousands of families all over the world, but it's because of her. And she's actually on the cover of my book, or an image that represents her, because she was just my complete opposite, and I didn't understand her.
Wow. So tell me, how did your parenting change once you understood her temperament compared to your temperament?
It completely changed. It went from me just, all I could think about were the negatives and the things I didn't like and how she wasn't meeting up to my expectations.
Mm-hmm.
It completely made me reframe that, wow, now I have this daughter who completes me. It's like Jerry Maguire, she is the antidote for my weaknesses. If I can learn her strengths and embrace her strengths and, teach her how to use them better, like instead of being manipulative, Jordan, this is how you become a number one negotiator, which she is now. Like she'll say, Mom, I want to do X, Y, and Z. And I'll be like, no. You know how we always say no in the moment, and we might not even mean it. We're just like, no. And so right away she starts negotiating, and she knows how now to make me halfway happy and her halfway happy, or a compromise. And so she'll instantly come up with a compromise, and then I'll be like, okay, that's great. And I think many times as parents, we feel like we have to be the ultimate authority. Mm-hmm. And you do have to set very clear boundaries, especially with some temperaments, because they will walk all over you. You give them an inch and they will take a mile. But when you have these parameters of, there is a yellow zone where we can negotiate. And then you teach your child how to negotiate and what an effective negotiation is. And so I just started looking at her strengths. And for instance, I'd be trying to figure out a difficult problem, even when she was 7 or 8. And I'd say, Jordan, I can't figure this out because I'm not very good at figuring out problems like this. It was a tactile problem with my bike. And I'm like, I just want to give you a shot at this because you're really good with your hands and you're really good at figuring this stuff out. And so I would let her do it. And I'd be like, wow, I could never do that. And so you're just like kind of in awe of their strengths that are so different from your own. And her type just needs to feel impressive. And here she was feeling like the family mess up because her brother is Mr. Perfect. And he met all my expectations. And so she was feeling like the family mess up. And so that type is like, okay, well, if I can't be impressive, I'll be impressive in another way. I'll just act out and be, crazy weird. And then I'll get attention that way. And so you want to give them that positive attention. And she just completely did a 180 when I started doing that.
What an amazing way to help a child gain some self-awareness and give them a chance to have a little bit of control over their lives and to claim some things that they could be proud of about themselves.
Well, it's so interesting because I think they feel validated. I think they start to feel more comfortable in their own skin sooner, because I would observe her at a birthday party where, because she is this lion personality type, there are 4 personality types in the big overarching view. It gets a lot more detailed than that. But she is the lion and I'm the human. Lions eat humans, right? And she was eating me alive until I figured it out. But she was having this birthday party, and she wanted to be the queen bee of that party. But she's an introvert. She is a very loud introvert. Like, she has learned how to behave like an extrovert when she's out of the house, but it's not her normal ilk. Like, she had to learn it, and it's not natural for her. So at this party, she is trying to be queen bee. She is trying to compete with the real, genuine extroverts in the room. And it's not happening. The real extroverts are they're kind of hijacking the party from her. She's very upset with that. And when I was able to explain to her that about introverts and extroverts, and that she is an introvert, she was able to just kind of own that and realize that I'm a type, and there are millions of other people out there with my same type, and science validates the way my brain works, and it's okay to be this way. And she started owning that and not trying to be like the extroverts in the room and just, forcing it. And so she just was able to relax into who she was a lot sooner.
That's great. Okay, so can you tell us really quickly about the different types of temperaments there are?
Yeah, so it goes all the way back to the Bible, whether you're faith-based or not. That's where it's first mentioned. There's an ox, a lion, an eagle, and a human. I have a feeling you might be either the ox or the human just because of what you do. But you also said that you can be a worrier, which that is kind of the ox and the human both have those characteristics. Everyone worries, but those two have a tendency to do it more. But the ox type is also Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. And Dorothy, it's because Frank Baum wrote that around 1920, and that's right when Carl Jung was coming up with the 8 psychological functions of the brain, which is what I use the most. And so Dorothy just wanted to go home, and she lived on a farm where they had ox, which goes back to the Bible's reference. And then you have the lion, which was the lion in The Wizard of Oz, who just wanted courage. And that type also is all about freedom. So you have the ox who wants security and the lion who wants freedom, and those two are opposite. And chances are you'll have one of each, because as a parent, that's what happens. You have your easy one who's a rule follower, that's the ox, and then your lion who's like, I want to do it my way. Because the ox is a cooperator and the lion is a challenger. And the reason they're a challenger is just because they have their own practical, efficient way of doing it that works for them. They don't care about convention. And they have a hard time, so getting to the teen in the future, they have a hard time with a traditional route. They have a hard time with, okay, you go to 4 years of college and then you go have your job. They have a hard time even thinking about being bossed. Like, they don't want to have a boss. They want to be their own boss. They want to be an entrepreneur. They want to figure it out as they go. They have street smarts. And they might want to go to a trade school rather than a traditional college. And then you have the eagle, face of God, which is the scarecrow. And they're all about their brain and their intellect. And sometimes they can be emotionally slow to develop. So what they have up here, they don't have here. And so parents really worry about this type if they have it, because they feel like, oh my gosh, this child has no empathy. What's wrong with this child? This child is running my house. But really, they're brilliant up here. And the more you can, look at those strengths and guide them and teach them in those areas they're lacking. Don't just expect them to have these empathy skills and these flexibility and adaptability. That's something they're going to have to learn. And they're smart. So they love temperament, because temperament gives them a tool so that they can understand people from a cerebral level rather than an emotional level. And this type usually They can like a traditional path for their future, but one of the scarecrow types, the one that actually is in the Wizard of Oz, they're all about possibilities. Like, they have a hard time choosing just one possibility. So some types choices stress them out. Having some types, I thought I turned it off. It's not turned off on my computer. So some types are stressed out by having too many choices. Some types are stressed out by having too little. So if one of these scarecrows' path is too straight and narrow, if you have they're not going to like that. They're actually called multi-potentialed. They could do anything. They really are multi-potentialed, and they talk a lot. If you have one of these, they just brainstorm out loud all the time. And then you have your human type, which is the Tin Man, which was the human. And the Tin Man just wanted a heart. And the Tin Man and the Scarecrow are similar in that they're both intuitives. They don't see what's in the physical world. They're more about what's up here. Whereas Dorothy and the Lion are both sensors. They're very in tune to their 5 senses and what's in the real world. But the Scarecrow and the Tin Man are both intuitive, and the Tin Man is more about deep, meaningful relationships. This could be you. I don't know. It's me. But that's why they get into counseling and teaching and anything that involves healing the world. And they have these high expectations where they feel like, I'm not content to just go work over here at a normal job. I have to either invent my own career, or I have to be like solving world hunger or curing cancer. And they have this like restlessness about them because they really have high expectations for themselves. And so they can be very, very insecure about themselves because it's never good enough. And so those are the 4 types. And you can see by knowing those types and the nuances of each one, because there are 4 subtypes within each one of those, how that could really help you know how to guide that teen to where they're going to be happiest. And so that they don't have to change their major 5 times, like I did. Changed my major 5 times, and I had to go to 5th year of school because it took me a while to figure it out.
Wow. I changed my major once, but you changed yours 5 times. That's amazing. Okay. So it sounds like the knowing temperament is just a really great tool to start to assess and help our teens start to make some decisions for their future.
Absolutely. And it all boils down to how your brain is wired. So temperament is actually your brain preferences. Okay. So, or how your brain is wired. So the reason I say preferences is because we have 4 psychological functions, and this is Carl Jung. We prefer one more than the others, and then it's a descending preference all the way down to our baby function. So I like to say it's like our brain is a car. We have a driver and a co-pilot, front seat functions that we use the most in tandem. And then we have 2 functions in the back seat that are kind of underused. But they can bring us balance if we are aware that they're there. So that driver function determines whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, because the driver function is either introverted or extroverted. So if your driver function is introverted, what people are really seeing, including your parents, is your co-pilot function, which is extroverted, because your driver, which you use the most, is hidden. So a lot of times those strengths are hidden from their parents. And this was my daughter. One of her best strengths is being analytical. You can't see that. Her number one brain function is introverted thinking. So as a little girl, that comes out as being rigid and very black and white, and it's not fair, and all these things that you can be like, she's driving me crazy, and you see them as weaknesses. But when you see all the strengths of introverted thinking mapped out, it's amazing. And so now if she goes into a job interview or whatever, she knows her strengths. I'm analytical. I'm rational. I'm logical. I'm calm under pressure. I'm a good negotiator. I'm a good problem solver. I have tactical skills. So we knew when she went into high school, even though she was a girly girl at that time, because the lion type is also very imitative. So she was trying to fit in by imitating her girly friends, even though she's not girly at all. 75% of girls are feelers. 75% of boys are thinkers. She was a thinker girl. And so she was trying to fit in with these feeler girls and wanted to take drama and some of these other classes, in high school. We said, you know what? You need to take engineering and physics, because we knew she had this tactical, analytical intelligence. And sure enough, she, like her first day in engineering class, she rocked it, knocked it out of the park. And, she's in there with all these guys, but that's her thing. She's so good at it.
Wow.
And we would have never known that had we not known what her driving brain function is, which is introverted, so it's hidden. So that's it's really interesting about how the brain is mapped out, because some people have a very extroverted co-pilot function. So when they're out with people, everybody thinks they're an extrovert, but they're not. They just have this very extroverted co-pilot function, and when they use it, it drains their battery.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's fascinating, because I've always experienced for myself in my life a couple of different things. The first one is, like when you were going through the all four temperaments, I was like, oh, I hear myself in all of those. And obviously that's not quite right. And I thought to myself, I wonder which one is really truly innate and which ones are adapted to my. And I always also noticed.
Can I stop you for 1 second?
Yeah, sure.
I just want to say, right there, I've seen thousands of patterns. Right there, that tells me a lot, because human type and the ox type can be chameleons. So that I think you're in those two camps, because you're definitely a cooperator, rule follower. You're not a challenger. So well, okay, she rolls her eyes. So anyway, go on. I hope I didn't.
But again, this is why I say, like, I wonder, because in some circumstances, I am very cooperative, and in other circumstances, I am a challenger. And if you talk to my parents, they would be like, oh, she's a challenger. But that was another thing that I was going to say is, also growing up, I had a lot of people say to me, and this could have been my adaptation. People say, oh, you're this and you're like this. And I was like, oh, but you don't really know. There are other parts of me that you're not seeing. So I really like how you say, we have the driver and we have the co-pilot, and there are parts of this that are adapted that we may see, that we may read the wrong way. So I like how your assessment really gets at the heart of this and can determine what is innately there and what is adapted, and find those strengths. I think that's great.
Well, a lot of people kind of dismiss temperament because they've had an experience with Myers-Briggs.
Okay.
It is not as dynamic as knowing the brain functions. Now, Myers-Briggs is like the car you drive, whereas the psychological functions are the passengers in the car. So it's a lot more dynamic to know what is the baby that's causing you stress and that you need to find balance in, because the baby function of our brain always brings balance to the driver function. So for instance, my driver is extroverted feeling. My baby is introverted thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see how those two totally balance out. Introverted thinking is rational thought without emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Extroverted feeling is all emotion. And it's moldable and flexible and harmonious and, and so my daughter is the opposite. Her dominant is introverted thinking and her baby is extroverted feeling. So she and I balance each other out. And all of our weaknesses come from our strengths, because if we overuse or misuse our strengths, they turn into weaknesses.
Wow.
And so knowing your 4 brain functions, and what else is really cool about it is your tertiary function, the 3rd function that's in the back seat. It's like a teenager. It actually develops when your child is around 10, 12, 13, and they really start to use it more in high school. And so, your teen might be experimenting with that right now. And then they also start experimenting more with the baby because their brain is developing more. And so it actually kind of gives parents a blueprint for how their child is going to mature and develop as their brain functions continue to develop.
My gosh. How hugely valuable is that?
And it's actually been scientifically shown because my daughter and I actually did it. We did QEEG maps of our brain, when they put the little cap on you and it showed up just like it does on paper when I map a person's family. That's what I'll do, is I'll map everyone's 4 brain functions so that a family can see where there's connection, where there's disconnection, where maybe there's a total outlier in the family.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that child or that parent always felt like an outlier, but they didn't know why. Mm-hmm. And so it helps them actually see on paper, I'm the only one that has this set of brain functions.
Wow.
And so, so it's just very eye-opening, and I feel like knowledge is power. And so you can't fix or you can't grow what you don't know. Ooh, I just made that up. You can't grow what you don't know.
There you go.
Be like a rat.
I'm going to write that one down too. I've been taking notes. I'm going to write that.
Grow what you don't know. So.
Oh, true. And hang on, you can't grow. I can't talk and write at the same time. But you don't know. Okay. So yeah, I talk all the time to parents and teens about really finding what's right for you and not getting swept up in the current of just what everybody else does or what you should do.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I use the analogy of you're dealt a hand of cards when you're born, because anybody who has twins out there knows that those twins were different the minute they came out. They were already 2 little defined people. Mm-hmm. So tabla rasa, I think that was back in the 70s. There's not a blank slate. These kids come out with their temperament. Mm-hmm. And yes, it's not a fixed mindset. It's a growth mindset. They can grow and adopt and learn from other temperaments, but they have the best chance of being the person they were designed to be if they learn to embrace the hand they've been dealt, as opposed to trying to adopt other people's strengths, and trying to be someone they're not. And so a lot of times parents are guilty of trying to mold that child into someone they're not. Because maybe that child is, kind of seeing unicorns and super sensitive. There's a type like that. They're not really on the planet. And the parent wants them to be in sports. That was their mission. And this child is just like running the wrong way on the soccer field. They're chasing butterflies, and they have the best chance of being who they were designed to be and being the best version of themselves if they can learn to embrace their strengths rather than living their life feeling like they're not enough. And, Harvard did a happiness study where you would think that our circumstances or our situation in life is what brings us happiness, but really it's only a small sliver. It's 10% of what gives you happiness. And the other 50%, or the biggest part of the pie, is your temperament. And some of us were born with a more depressive temperament. But the good news is that 40% of that pie is how you react to the other 60%. So if you are equipping your child from day one that these are your strengths, you are this creative, sensitive, empathetic person. You are designed to be, you're designed to bring the beauty to the world. That's why God made you. That's why you were, and that's why you're on the planet. And you're probably going to heal people and be there for people. Let's volunteer at a humane society because you're going to be so good at that. Let's go and love on elderly people. Just play on that child's strengths from early on, rather than, putting them in sports. And boys can have this temperament, putting them in football, and that boy just feels like they're already a feeler in a world of thinkers, and they already feel like, I am not tough enough. I got to squish this down. And so it's just, that's my mission, is just to get parents on board with how their kids are wired. Wow. So that they can go with the flow of their temperament. Go with the flow so they know, so they can grow.
Love it.
An extra rhyme there. Go with the flow rather than push against the tide.
Yes, I love that. What an amazing gift to give your teens right before they step into their adulthood, before they step into the rest of their lives, to know what they can bring. First of all, to give them a sort of a way to start to figure out what would be right for their lives. But then regardless of what they end up doing, knowing what they bring to the table in any situation that they're in.
So I worked a very long time in my work in the classroom and in the corporate world to design, actually mostly in the classroom with kids, to design a child inner drive assessment. So temperament manifests itself in children much differently than it does in adults. For instance, the scarecrow type, as an adult, calm, cool, collected. They have the emotional depth of a puddle. But as kids, they are explosive. Frustration. And this parent will test this child as a feeler. Oh, my child is so emotional. Well, they're actually not going to be when they're an adult. So it manifests itself very differently in children. And so I've looked at thousands of patterns. I wrote a book with, probably over 200 case studies in it.
Wow.
And so I've seen these patterns play out time and time again, very, very consistently. And so I designed the inner drive assessment based on that. I would say when parents are doing the assessment for their children, your child does not do it. Because the reason that is the child, for instance, the feeler boy who wants to be tough. He's going to take that test and he's going to test himself the way he wants to be. Mm-hmm. Or they're going to test themselves, they want to be an extrovert. So they're going to test themselves that way. Or they're going to test themselves based on how they feel that day, in that moment. Mm-hmm. Whereas as a parent, you can be objective and you can look at that child's life over the course of their life. And that's how the test is designed, so that you can have that big picture view of your child. And I feel like the younger your child is, the more pure that test result is going to be, because they don't have all the learned adapted behaviors that they get over time. Mm-hmm. And I find when I do my adult test with older people, like seniors, they're like almost tied on every letter, because they have learned, that is if they're not a crotchety old person. If they're a balanced, beautiful old person, they're like tied on everything because they've learned to adapt strengths from all different temperaments over time. So it comes with a video that defines that result that you came up with. And not all of it's going to fit. Let's face it, people are complex. But if the overarching feeling of that video feels right, then you know you probably tested your child correctly. And so it's just kind of a little bit of a check and balance. And I will, touch base with you and say, hey, did the video fit? And if it didn't, then, there's a 10-minute phone consultation that comes along with it. And we can kind of adjust and tweak based on that. It also comes with a couple of other videos too that are just like some basics about temperament.
That's amazing.
And then I have a free ebook on my website as well that you could check out, which is the 14 instant ways to connect with your child. And it's actually a chapter from my book that I just published. So
amazing. Thank you so much for that.
Yay. I'm happy to give it because that is my mission, to get parents to see their kids for who they truly are.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for sharing your work with us and giving us some insights on how to help our teens figure out who they are and what they want to do with the rest of their lives.
My pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity.